Feminism and religion. For many, these two words sound like oil and water, like historical adversaries locked in an age-old battle. On one side, you have a movement dedicated to women's emancipation and tearing down hierarchies. On the other, institutions often criticized for being pillars of patriarchy. The popular view, and even some classical sociology, has often painted religion as an oppressive force against women. A force that, through sacred texts, dogmas, and exclusively male leadership, made female subordination seem natural, or even divinely ordained. But what if that's only half the story? What if, when we look closer through the lens of modern sociology, we discover that religion isn't just one thing? What if it's both a cage and a key? Today, we're not looking for a simple yes or no answer. We're going to dissect the incredibly complex, often contradictory relationship between feminism and religion. We'll analyze how belief systems in society function not just to control, but also to liberate. This is a deep dive into what sociologists call one of the greatest battlegrounds of modernity. To understand this debate, we have to start with the fundamental critique. The founders of sociology, thinkers like Marx, Durkheim, and Weber, viewed religion primarily as a force for social cohesion and sometimes control. Marx famously called it the opium of the people, a tool used by the ruling class to keep the oppressed in their place. Early feminist theorists, like the brilliant Simone de Beauvoir, applied this logic directly to gender. In her landmark book, The Second Sex, she argued that religion has historically been used to cement male power. This sociological critique is built on three main pillars. First, there are the texts and doctrines themselves. Many sacred texts, written in undeniably patriarchal times, have passages that explicitly place women in a subordinate role. They're told to obey their husbands, blamed for original sin, or seen as ritually impure. Second, the institutional structures. The exclusion of women from top leadership positions is glaring evidence. The Catholic Church's refusal to ordain women as priests, or the restrictions on female leadership in many Orthodox synagogues and mosques, act as a kind of sacred glass ceiling. This reinforces the idea that spiritual and moral authority is inherently male. And third, the control of the female body. The sociology of religion shows us that religious institutions are perhaps the single greatest regulators of sexuality and the female body. From dress codes, like the veil, the hijab, or Puritan modesty, to the prohibition of abortion and contraception, religion wields significant power, dictating what women can and cannot do with their own bodies. From this classical perspective, religion looks like an ideological machine that legitimizes and reproduces patriarchy. To be free, a woman would need to free herself from religion. But if our analysis stopped here, we'd be missing the most interesting part. The more advanced question is, are women just passive victims of this structure? The sociological answer is a resounding no, and this is where we introduce the crucial concept of agency. Women don't just passively receive religion. They interpret it, they negotiate it, they subvert it, and they recreate it. What once looked like a monolithic block of oppression begins to fracture under scrutiny. This is where feminist theology comes in. Instead of abandoning their faith, theologians from within their own traditions began to dig deep, searching for a liberating spirituality. In Christianity, for example, theologians like Rosemary Radford Ruether questioned the image of an exclusively male God. They revived the figure of Sophia, which means wisdom, a feminine personification of the divine. They re-examined Jesus' ministry, highlighting how radically egalitarian his treatment of women was, especially compared to the society he lived in. They argued that patriarchy isn't the core message of Christianity, but a cultural distortion that corrupted it. We see this in Judaism too. Judith Plasko, in her book Standing Again at Sinai, challenged the central story of the Jewish covenant, which was made literally between God and the sons of Israel. She proposed a rereading that includes women's voices and experiences, creating new ceremonies and redefining old ones to reflect a theology of equality. And in Islam, thinkers like Amina Wadud and Fatemeh Mernissi started a revolution in interpretation. Wadud, for instance, argues that the Quran, when read in its original context, actually promotes a fundamental equality between the sexes. She advocates for a gender jihad, not a holy war, but a struggle to separate the eternal divine message from the flawed human interpretations that were written down by men in deeply misogynistic societies. Sociologically, what these theologians are doing is monumental. They are challenging the monopoly on interpretation. They prove that sacred texts aren't just one note. They are complex discourses, open to debate and contestation. But modern sociology goes even deeper than elite theologians. What about ordinary, deeply religious women who might not call themselves feminists, but still find tremendous power in their faith? This is where the debate gets even more complex and fascinating. Sociologist Linda Woodhead argues that, especially in very secular societies or during times of rapid social change, religion can offer women a refuge and a source of power that the secular world denies them. Think about community and social capital. For many women, the church, mosque, or synagogue are the primary public spaces where they can build networks of solidarity, exercise leadership, even if it's informal, and gain social status. Just think of the central role of black women in churches across the United States during the Civil Rights Movement. They were the organizational backbone, the engine of the movement, even when men were the ones in the pulpit. And then there's the paradox of piety. Anthropologist Saba Mahmood, in her groundbreaking work on the piety movement in Egypt, observed something that puzzled many Western feminists. She saw women who were choosing to adopt the veil and live a more devout life, not because of male pressure or false consciousness, but as a deliberate act of agency. For them, piety was a way to cultivate virtue and to actively critique what they saw as the decadence and sexual objectification of Western feminism. They saw the veil not as oppression, but as liberation from a different kind of tyranny, the tyranny of the beauty market and the secular male gaze. This forces us to ask some really tough questions about our own definitions. What exactly is liberation? Is it always the Western, secular, individualistic model? Or can agency also show up as a voluntary submission to a divine power, as a way to find dignity and purpose outside of those norms? And this brings us to the heart of an advanced sociological analysis. The relationship between feminism and religion is not a one-way street. It is deeply contradictory. Religion is a patriarchal structure, and religion is a resource for feminist liberation. It's not one or the other, it's both at the same time. It is a symbolic and material battlefield. To understand this, we have to bring in the concept of intersectionality, coined by Kimberlé Crenshaw. A woman's experience with her religion is never just about her gender. It is shaped by her race, her social class, her nationality, and her historical context. For example, for a Catholic woman in Ireland fighting for abortion rights, the church might feel like her main adversary. But for a Muslim woman in France fighting for her right to wear a hijab to school, her religion is her identity and her banner of resistance against a form of secularism that she feels is trying to exclude her. So, modern sociology moves us away from making simplistic judgments. It stops us from saying that religion is simply good or bad for women. Instead, it forces us to ask better questions. How is religion being used in this specific context? Who is interpreting it? Is it being used to legitimize existing power structures or to challenge them? Feminism and religion are not eternal enemies. They are two powerful discourses that coexist, often uncomfortably, within the same societies, and sometimes within the very same woman. True sociological analysis isn't about choosing a side, but about having the courage to understand the complexity of the battle. Thanks so much for diving into this complex topic with me today. If you found this analysis interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the social forces that shape our world. See you next time.